Next up is our guest, Dr. Woody Brock. He's a 5-time graduate of Harvard and Princeton and has a Ph.D. in mathematical economics and political philosophy. He's the founder of the economic think tank SED Inc., and he's the author of the book that was just sent to Mr. Bennett called American Gridlock, Why the Left and Right Are Both Wrong. And so we're very pleased to have Dr. Woody Brock with us. How are you today?
Fine, thank you, sir. How are you?
Great. We're glad to have you on the George Jarkesy Show.
Thank you.
I got to tell you, we're having a hard time putting the book down.
Well, it's always nice to hear that. I want to get it out there because it's about people's future. Country's been real good to me.
Sure. Give us a little bit of overview, just a quick overview of the book for our listeners.
Point of the book, which is a very ambitious book, is to identify 5 economic crises that we have. Some are familiar, like where we go broke from Social Security and Medicare, where we have a $50 trillion unfunded liability. What do we do about this decade, the, quote, lost decade, so our kids can get jobs once again? What do we do to prevent these ridiculous Wall Street crashes that are largely due to excessive leverage in borrowing, which the government still has not dealt with? And what I'm doing is taking 5 different topics like that and basically arguing that by using a deeper level of thinking, you can arrive at win-win solutions to these crises, to every one of them. And the solutions have nothing to do with right-wing this and left-wing that. Notice what a contrast that is to today's situation, where it's a shouting match, a dialogue of the deaf between the left and the right, between Fox News versus MSNBC, the New York Times versus the Wall Street Journal. The public are fed up. It isn't solving our problems, and I am proposing new solutions to the crises that have nothing to do with left-wing, right-wing, and hopefully, therefore, we break American gridlock, which is the name of the book.
Oh yeah, I think a lot of this rhetoric is a lot of the problem, really. And what's happened is the American voter and the sleepy American public, have to actually have a boxing match or an MSNBC versus a Fox to even wake them up to pay attention. And it's a shame because during that period, our country continues to slide the wrong direction. I couldn't agree with you more.
Correct. Well, let me just raise the level of debate a little bit further. You're only partly right there. It goes further. The new Pew Foundation poll shows actually they've woken up and people now think gridlock in this dialogue of the deaf is the number one issue in the country. They're fed up. That's
I hope that poll is right. I don't trust these polls very much, but I hope that it's right. You know what I find that, it doesn't matter, if you want to run in the middle, like let's take Ron Paul, for instance.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the issue is for our situation is this long years of running a campaign. And now you're talking $1 billion. And I think that a lot of it is, it's a treacherous row to hoe to try to be into politics. And so much so that most people aren't willing to give up their entire lives and their family and everything else to live that on that roller coaster.
You're right, and it's an embarrassment. I think the founding fathers would be appalled by it. And interestingly enough, if you just cross the pond and go to England, and the English and the Americans have been very close over the time, there's none of that. Money does not buy elections over there. It's absolutely different. They get their elections done within 2 months. And our system has become an international joke.
Dr. Brock, this is Dwayne, the co-host. I couldn't agree with you more. Me and George have talked that very point over many, many times. I got a question for you. I was reading through the book over the last couple of days.
Yep.
You point out that gerrymandering is a big problem. We've split our districts up into right and left safe districts. How do we get past that?
It's very interesting you mentioned that because that was an obscure part of the book. And the point I was making was the result of this gerrymandering is if you're in one district and I'm in another, we are pulled to more extreme positions, which reinforces this deafening dialogue of the deaf. How do you get around that? I frankly can't give you a good answer to that. I mean, I'm waiting for the Supreme Court to make some decisions. There are appeals court decisions. They're invalidating some of the gerrymandering. But this is a big problem. It's a terrible problem. And it's a big
problem because it's really divided. Everybody's on that one team or another, and then you get candidates that double down in the primary and they're going to go way to the left if they're Democrat or way to the right if they're Republicans, and you don't get sensible people.
This is exactly the point I'm making. The gerrymandering exacerbates that left-right divide, which is called gridlock. Yep, it's a problem.
The other thing, and there's no way we could – go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
There's no way we could discuss the content of this book. I mean, it's a lot. But I tell you, the one, if we could take one major issue, it would be Medicare and entitlement spending down the road.
Glad you mentioned it. Perfect example.
I think this book should be required reading just to be in Congress. I really do. As I picked this book up, I think everybody should have to read this book.
But let's hear about the Medicare, your kind of thoughts on what we could do concretely or what you're kind of proposing, putting forward.
You know, when you picked up the book, you saw there were 35 endorsements from eminent people, and they're all saying the same thing. Every member of Congress should read this. And Medicare is a perfect example. What a politicized issue. I hate Obamacare. I love it. Why don't we just ascend above that whole thing, and let's do the following. Let's you and I agree on apple pie and motherhood. By that I mean, what are our goals? I want many more Americans to have health care. Do you agree?
Yeah, most people do.
Of course they do. These are basic axioms, basic truisms. Secondly, I want when you have your new insurance and I have mine through Obamacare, wouldn't it be nice if the doctor's phone answers when you call up? That was the point missing from Obamacare. So I want not only that you and I have more access to the system, I want the phone to answer, which is to say I want more services supplied now that more are demanded. Sound common sense? Sure.
Yeah, no, it does. Yeah, right.
No, hold on. The objection is going to be, Dr. Brock, that's just great. You know, more this, more that, more for everybody. You're bankrupt. Already, medical care in this country is 18.5% of GDP. It's supposed to go to 35 by the middle of the century, which means no Pentagon and we're broke. My third goal is I want it to be 10% of GDP. I want to go back from 18 down to 10. Now, you're going to say, wait a minute, what are you talking about? You want to have it all your way. You want more this, more that, and half the cost? Absolutely. Published in the back of the book, because the editors demanded it, is a formal proof that there is one and only one solution to the crisis where you can satisfy all three things: a much lower bill for the nation and much more supplies for you and me. And the answer is you have to increase what economists call the supply curve faster than the demand curve. Now, we don't get into that in the radio, but the point about this is it is not a left-wing or a right-wing point of view. Your dog knows if you're going to have more demand for apricots, you better plant a lot more apricot trees out there, correct?
No question about it.
And the point is, you go look back at the Obamacare debate over 2 years. No one ever made this point. And his bill, 2,400 pages, misses it. So the point I'm making is the book shows it in detail, but you can solve the nation's single greatest economic catastrophe in the future simply by realizing the importance of more supply. And the point about this is that left-wing? Is that right-wing? No. It's common sense 101. And that's
it's nice to, I got to tell you, Dr. Brock, it's nice to hear some common sense. And I want to thank you for being on the George Jarkesy Show today. We want to have you back. This gerrymandering conversation is the whole show. Entitlements is a whole show. Government spending on wild is a whole show.
Yep,
so, anyways, listen. To our listeners, the book is called American Gridlock: Why the Left and Right Are Both Wrong. You can go to the GeorgeJarkesy.com website and buy the book from there, or learn more about the book there.
Just go to
you can also reach it.
Amazon. It's Amazon.com. It's the same.
Sure. And it also, you can reach him on his Twitter handle, and it's at @HWoodyBrock. It's at @HWoodyBrock. So listen, I don't want you to go anywhere. If you go anywhere, it could cost you money. This is the George Jarkesy Show.